a drake were eagerly waiting for their eggs to hatch. Soon it was time to rejoice. The eggs finally hatched, and out came 5 little ducklings, one by one. But one of them was very different from the rest of them. "You are so different than the rest of us, but don't worry, you will be good when you grow up." But other ducks were not so kind and affectionate as the mama duck. All the other ducks and ducklings made fun of the young one. "Na na 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 na. You are so ugly. You are not one of us." "Look at you. You are so ugly." Nobody wanted to play with the young duckling. He had no friends or family. He was all lonely and sad. He saw his reflection in the water and assumed,
"Perhaps I may be really ugly. I don't want to see my reflection ever again."
Tired of all the bullying and rejections, the ugly duckling left his home and walked into the woods. Tired and lonely, and when all hope was about to be lost, a kind woodcutter took pity on the ugly duckling and took him home. The woodcutter took good care of the ugly duckling. The ugly duckling was happy to find a cozy and warm home. The ugly duckling grew bigger and bigger day after day, with strong wings and legs. One day, it flew to a nearby pond and wandered around the edge of the pond. The ugly duckling saw a wedge of swans playing in the pond and admired them.
What beauty and grace!
The swans noticed the curious ugly duckling. "Hi, want to play with us?" The ugly duckling was quite surprised. It was long since anybody had been so kind to him.
What, me? I would love to. I like your beautiful wings. What are you called?
The swan burst into laughter and said, "Same as what they call you."
Me? You mean an ugly duckling?
Who called you ugly? You're a beautiful and handsome swan.
What? Me, a handsome swan?
The ugly duckling peeped down to see his reflection. Yes, he had grown into a beautiful and handsome swan, and he had never even been a duck at all.
What a fool I had been to believe others all these days.
Come join us. We would be glad to have you as our friend. The ugly duckling was finally happy and free. He realized that he was just different than the rest of the ducks. Snow White and the 7 Dwarfs. Once upon a time, in a big castle, there lived a kind princess named Snow White. Snow White was not only the prettiest girl, but she was very kind and helpful too. All the animals and birds loved her. One day, her mother the queen passed away, and her father the king married again. Her stepmother was a mean and evil woman. The new queen was jealous of Snow White. She wanted to be the most beautiful and fairest of all. She asked her magic mirror, "Mirror, mirror, tell me who is the fairest of all." The mirror replied, Queen, I hear your call. Snow White is the fairest of all. The stepmother was furious and ordered her servants to take Snow White away to the woods and kill her once and for all. So the servants took Snow White for a ride in the woods.
Oh, I love to ride on a horse in the woods.
However, when they reached deep in the woods, the servants took pity on her, and instead of killing her, they told her about the evil plan hatched by her stepmother and left Snow White to her fate in the forest. Heartbroken, Snow White wandered for long and finally came across a small cottage.
Hello? Anyone at home?
The cottage belonged to the 7 dwarfs living in the woods. They had been away in search of food and fodder. Finding the house in a mess, Snow White cleaned and tidied the house and cooked a delicious meal for all. The 7 dwarfs were soon back home. They were grateful to Snow White for all the help. They shared their story, and Snow White shared her story.
It's all right. I have found a new home and new friends.
The dwarves and Snow White became good friends, and they played and sang together. Snow White was all happy with the 7 friendly dwarves. Meanwhile, overjoyed on getting rid of Snow White, her stepmother asked the mirror again, "Mirror, tell me who is the fairest of all?" The mirror replied,
Queen, I hear your call. Snow White is still the fairest of all.
The queen was furious. So, Snow White is alive? She threatened her servants and learnt the truth. Deciding to finally get rid of Snow White herself, she took a few poisoned apples and headed to the woods, disguised as an old woman. On finding Snow White alone, "My little girl, here are some delicious apples just for you."
Thank you, kind lady. I love apples.
As soon as Snow White took a bite, she fainted and dropped to the ground as dead as the wood. Finally got rid of you, Snow White. My work is done. On finding Snow White dropped as dead, the dwarves were very sad and broken. They laid her to rest in a coffin and mourned around her. Just then, a handsome prince passing through the woods. Being curious, he dismounted from his horse to see the 7 dwarfs crying around the beautiful Snow White. The prince could not contain himself, and his eyes were filled with tears. As his tears rolled down, they fell on Snow White's cheek. The tears of her true love woke up Snow White from her deep slumber. To everyone's delight, the handsome prince, Snow White, and the 7 dwarfs lived happily together ever after. And the evil queen met her fate and was sent to the dungeons forever. Once, in a far-off land, there lived an old miller with his 3 sons. He had a mill, a donkey, and his dear cat. When the miller died, he left his mill to his eldest son, the donkey to his second son, and his dearest pet, the cat, to his youngest son, Pete. The mill and donkey were of good use to his brothers. But
what will I do with this cat? Anyways, our father loved him dearly. I must take care of him.
Pete was a kind and hard-working boy, but to his bad luck, he could not find any suitable job to meet his needs. Nevertheless, he took good care of the cat. Soon, the cat began to love and trust his new and affectionate master. One day,
Master, don't worry. Please trust me and we can turn our fortunes.
Pete was surprised to see the cat speak.
Master, now please lend me your boots, your hat, and that fancy bag. Trust me and please do as I say.
I don't know what you're up to, but I will trust you.
The cat wore the boots and the hat and ran off to the woods with the bag. He soon caught a rare rabbit from the woods. The cat ran to the king's castle and presented the rare rabbit to the king and the princess.
Your Majesties, I am the Puss in Boots. I bring a small present from my master, the Marquis of Carabas.
The king and the princess were very impressed with the present and the cat's mannerisms. The Puss in Boots continued to bring many gifts and presents to the king from the woods. The cat would amuse the king and the princess with many interesting stories and tales from far-off lands. One day, the cat got to know that the king and princess would be riding out along the stream. The smart cat soon devised a plan.
Master, let's go for a walk by the stream.
When they were near the stream,
It's so hot today. Master, why don't you take a swim in the stream?
soon the king's carriage arrived on the road along the stream. The cat quickly ran to the carriage.
Help! Help! Your Majesty! The thieves have stolen my master's clothes and our horses!
The king presented some finest clothes to Pete. Pete looked like a handsome prince in such clothes.
Your Majesties, please visit our castle with my master.
The cat raced ahead to the green fields belonging to an evil and scary ogre. He struck a deal with the farmers who were tormented by the cruel ogre.
Dear people, I am the Puss in Boots. My master, the Marquis of Carabas, will help us get rid of that evil ogre only if you do as I say. The king and the Marquis of Carabas will be here soon. Tell the king that these fields and castle belong to the Marquis of Carabas.
Then the cat ran towards the castle to meet the ogre.
Long live the Marquis of Carabas and the king!
To whom do these fertile fields belong to?
To our lord, the Marquis of Carabas, your majesty.
By now, Pete is quite perplexed, but he trusts his cat with patience. Meanwhile, the cat presented himself before the ogre.
Sir, I am the Puss in Boots. I come with an important message from the king, but I need to speak to you alone.
Now, quick, what does the king want?
Sir, the king has heard about your rare abilities to change forms and is very much impressed with you. He wants you to marry his daughter, the princess. But
But what? Tell me quick. I want to marry the beautiful princess.
first, the king wants me to test your skills.
That's all? It's simple.
No sooner had the ogre changed into a ferocious lion.
Okay, I see that. This was easy. But can you change into a tiny mouse? Can you?
Silly cat. That's was even more simple.
As soon as the ogre changed into a tiny mouse, the cat pounced on it and gulped it down his throat. That was the end of the evil and cruel ogre. The servants at the castle were grateful to the cat for freeing them from the evil ogre.
Listen, it was not me, but the brave and kind Marquis of Carabas that saved you from that ogre. He is our new master.
Soon after, the king's carriage arrived at the castle.
Long live the Marquis of Carabas! Long live the king!
The king and the princess were quite impressed, and the king announces the wedding of the princess with Pete. Pete, the Marquis of Carabas, finally marries the beautiful princess. The Marquis of Carabas is kind and generous to his people. Pete, the princess, and the cat in the boots all lived happily together. Red Riding Hood. Little Red Riding Hood was a lovely and cheerful girl. She loved to wear her red riding hood. One day, her mother called out to her, "Little Red Riding Hood, your grandma is unwell. Please take this basket of hot breads and hot pumpkin soup to her."
Sure, Mom. I would love to see Grandma.
Good girl, but be careful on your way. Don't wander in the woods, and don't stray away from the main road. And especially, don't talk to any strangers on the road. So Little Red Riding Hood set out, carrying the basket for her grandma. Lost in her own thoughts and humming a song, she soon forgot what her mother had told her. Little Red Riding Hood spotted some beautiful and sweet-smelling flowers in the woods. Tempted, Little Red Riding Hood strayed away from the road into the woods to collect some flowers for her grandma. Flowers will surely cheer up Grandma. As she was busy collecting flowers, a big, bad wolf was lurking around, planning to eat up Little Red Riding Hood. But the cunning wolf thought for a while.
Wait, I can hear the hunters and their dogs barking nearby. And if the girl screams, the hunters and their dogs will surely tear me into pieces. Let me wait for the right moment.
Instead, the wolf tried to befriend Little Red Riding Hood.
Hello, little girl. Don't be afraid. I don't like to eat humans at all. Are you new here?
Little Red Riding Hood easily believed the sweet talks of the wolf and told him everything about her grandma and herself.
Oh, I stay nearby. I am visiting my grandma with these hot snacks for her. She is unwell and lives alone just behind that big windmill.
The big bad wolf now had a new plan.
Foolish girl. Let me reach Grandma's house from the shortcut. I will eat Grandma first and wait for this girl. And then these yummy snacks, too. Okay, I have to go now. See you soon. Bye.
So as planned, the wolf took a shortcut and reached Grandma's house a bit early. "Grandma, open the door. It's me, Little Red Riding Hood." But Grandma was out to see the doctor nearby and had left the door unlocked. Seeing nobody at home, the cunning wolf entered the house. He wore Grandma's dress, spectacles, and her cap, and then lay covered in her bed. A little while later, Little Red Riding Hood arrived at her grandma's house.
Grandma, it's me, Little Red Riding Hood. Open the door.
"Oh dear, the door is open. Come in." But as soon as Little Red Riding Hood entered Grandma's room, she noticed that something was strange about Grandma. She hesitated to go close to her granny.
Grandma, you seem to be very ill. Your ears have grown so long.
"Oh, so that I hear you well, my dear."
And your eyes so big and fierce.
"Oh, so that I see you well, my dear."
And your teeth so long and sharp.
Just then, the real grandma was back home, and as she stepped into the room, she was shocked to see the wolf in her bed. The alarmed wolf jumped towards Little Red Riding Hood, saying,
Sharp teeth, huh? So that I can eat you both.
Little Red Riding Hood was scared at the sight of the wolf, but she kept her presence of mind. As soon as the wolf neared her, she splashed the hot pumpkin soup on the wolf's face. The soup was really hot. The wolf howled and cried in pain, was unable to see anything, and fumbled around the room.
Oh, I can't see a thing.
Seizing the opportunity, Grandma raised a big hue and crying called out for help. Help! Help! There is a wolf here! All the noise and commotion had put the neighboring hunters and their dogs on alert. The hunters and their ferocious dogs chased the big bad wolf away into the woods.
Oh, someone save me from these dogs! I will never return to these woods.
The big bad wolf was never seen or heard of again. Little Red Riding Hood hugged her grandma. Grandma, I am so sorry. I will never stray away in woods or talk to any strangers. I will always remember this lesson.